You probably know Jeff Teague, aka BLT, Big League Teague, aka NBA Teague Pass from clips you see on social media. He's an extremely funny dude as well as an amazing storyteller. But what if I told you he was also a dog? Believe it or not, back in 2015, Jeff was an all-star starting at point guard for the 60-win Hawks. That year, he averaged 16 points with an effective field goal percentage of 50%. Along with that, he dished out 7 assists and got nearly 2 steals a night. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. He was able to achieve such a moderately impressive scoring average by utilizing his underrated offensive skills. First of all, Jeff was a little dude, but he could punch that fucker with force. Finishing at the hoop was his bread and butter. A name that comes to mind when thinking of his finishing is Derrick Rose, well, at least in terms of efficiency. During his all-star year, Jeff shot 62% from 0 to 3 feet, which is actually just a little higher than what MVP Derrick Rose shot from the same distance. I'm not saying Jeff's a better finisher than Derrick, but he was damn good. Like I mentioned already, he threw down some pretty sick dunks, but that wasn't where most of his interior buckets came from. Rather, he was a very crafty finisher below the rim. His quickness and tight handle were what allowed him to be so dangerous scoring in close. He never really did anything fancy either. What I remember from watching him back then was he would hit his defender with some basic ass but quick crossover, then his legs would start spinning like the Roadrunner and he was at the rim. His slashing in terms of looks was more so Jeremy Lin rather than Derrick Rose. They both barely got fancy with it, but their explosiveness gave them freedom to penetrate the hole quickly and with force. In addition to his slashing abilities, he was a pretty decent three-point shooter. He didn't take a lot, but for his career he shot 36%. Then when he stepped inside the line and took middies, he wasn't that much more efficient than he was from 3. That was pretty much it for BLT's scoring. Another thing he was really good at was playmaking. During his glory days, he averaged around 6 to 8 assists a night. Just like his scoring though, it wasn't flashy. That's just who Jeff was. He was chill like that. Because he was so chill, he didn't have the largest fan base until his podcast, which made him a perfect fit on the Hawks during the 2010s, specifically 2015. As I mentioned earlier, he was an all-star that year and the Hawks won 60 games. They had an extremely talented team, but just like Jeff, nobody really stuck out. It was impossible to say one player was the star of the team. They played like a EuroLeague club with lots of ball movement and teamwork. The ball didn't just stick in one person's hands, it moved around like a graceful bird, like a hawk. Coach Bud developed this white AAU team style of play during his time with the Spurs, where he learned from Greg Popovich. They just had so many solid players it was impossible not to. Shout out Pero Antic. Atlanta finished with the 6th best offense and 6th best defense in the NBA. Other than Jeff, one player who really helped that team's offense was Kyle Korver. I don't think anyone understands how insane of a season he had. The dude was 4 threes away from being the first player in the 50-50-90 club. Fun fact, as of right now, Grayson Allen's close to becoming part of that club as well. Korver's pinpoint accuracy was rewarded by him being put on the All-Star team along with Jeff, Paul, and Al. None of them averaged crazy stats either. I find it wild how Trey got snubbed from the All-Star team last season when he averaged 26 and 10. Meanwhile, in 2015, Kyle Korver averaged 12 points and was an all-star. Honestly, all-star selections. Andrew Wiggins being named an all-star starter in 2022 made me want to vomit. Anyway, the Hawks dominated the regular season, winning 60 games and only losing 22. In the first round of the playoffs, they matched up with the Nets led by a 400-year-old Kevin Garnett. The Hawks won that series 4-2. Jeff had a couple nice games, including one where he didn't score a single point but dished out 13 assists. The next round they played the Wizards and he was matched up with John Wall. Lucky for him, John got hurt and only played 3 games. A young Bradley Beal picked up John slack though, averaging 25, 5, and 5, but it wasn't enough. The Hawks won that series as well. Then came the Eastern Conference Finals. If you didn't know, I'm a huge Hawks fan and I have a vivid memory of this series. Me and my best friend Caleb watched it together back in middle school. Before game 1 started, we really thought we had a chance at making the finals. Then it started and LeBron immediately started beating the living shit out of us like a drunk dad would an ugly ginger stepchild. We ended up losing every game and got sent to Bullock Island. The Hawks management realized that in order to win a championship you need a superstar, which the Hawks did not have. They realized the team had to be blown up. Jeff played just one more year in Atlanta, got swept by LeBron in the first round, then got sent to Indiana. He was the Pacers point guard for just one season but averaged his 2nd most assists ever along with 15 points. They made the playoffs and for the 3rd year in a row Jeff matched up with LeBron. He played really well, averaging a very efficient 17 points and 6 assists. His deep bomb was automatic as well, connecting on over 50% of them. Sadly though, this was not enough to stop Bron and he swept him yet again. That's 12 playoff games in a row where LeBron destroyed Jeff's hopes and dreams. For that reason, I don't blame him for decking LeBron. He deserved it. That's fucked. After that, Jeff made a business decision and went out west to escape the king. This did not work because LeBron also went out west. Jeff ended up playing with Minnesota for 3 years and let's just say he did not have the best time. In a podcast episode, Jeff called Timberwolves fans the worst. After that, he went on to detail what Jimmy did that one practice. If you've been living under a rock, a couple years ago, Jimmy wanted to get traded from Minnesota, so he wasn't coming to practice. One day, an unnamed person forced Jimmy to come, which he really didn't like. Because of this, he cut the Minnesota parts out of his shorts and shirt, went to practice, and proceeded to humiliate the entire organization. The starters got the worst of it. Jimmy played him in a scrimmage with the scrubs and won 18-6. The crazy part is, he only shot the ball once. Instead of scoring, he led them to victory with his D in mouth. From what I've read, he was getting a bunch of steals and passing while simultaneously calling all the starters ass and telling the organization to pay him. Jeff said he thought that was funny until he realized he was one of the starters. Because of this, Jeff said he and the other starters were pissed off and wanted a rematch. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it. Jimmy had played another scrimmage, won it, then went home to do an interview with Rachel Nichols. Jeff laughed about that and said that's why Jimmy's the best. His reaction to Jimmy embarrassing him and his team on a viral level as well as calling him ass is exactly why everyone loves Jeff. He's extremely real and won't gas himself up to look cool in stories. As a matter of fact, most of the stories he tells involve him being the butt of the joke. Because he's able to let us know he doesn't think of himself as the coolest guy in the world makes him extremely likable. If he were to have told the story and made excuses as to why they lost or seemed salty, people probably wouldn't like him as much. Like I mentioned earlier, he's just chill like that. Although Jeff doesn't try to be cool, objectively he's an extremely cool person. He's a former NBA champion, all-star, one of the best playmakers in Hawks history, and now he's the host of the funniest basketball podcast in the world. The reason his podcast is so damn popular is because of the hilarious stories he tells. One of my favorites was the one about how he almost got kicked out of Wake Forest. According to Jeff, back in college he used LimeWire to download music. Little did he know he had downloaded over $5 million worth of songs. The worst part is the cops showed up at his door because of it, and the only reason they caught him was because he tried downloading the Kim K. Ray J sex tape. Speaking of Wake Forest, I never talked about Jeff's time there. Prior to the NBA, Jeff made a name for himself with the Demon Deacons. During his freshman year, he averaged almost 14 points, finishing as the second leading scorer on the team behind only James Johnson. Ish Smith was also on that team. Along with being the second leading scorer, he made it on the ACC All-Freshman team. During the regular season, he had a lot of great games, but one of his most dominant came against Miami, where he dropped a wildly efficient season-high 27 points. He also gave the Mormons the business, putting 26 on BYU's head, missing just 2 shots. Wake Forest wasn't the best that year, but the following season they were really good, being ranked as high as first. Jeff, Bloodsport, Ish Smith, and freshman Al-Farouq Aminu led Wake Forest to a commanding 24-5 regular season record as well as March Madness. Jeff's scoring improved to 19 points a night, and he became the first Wake Forest All-American since CP3. Although the team was super talented, they lost in the ACC championship and then got upset by Cleveland State in the first round. After that, as we all know, Jeff left school for the big leagues and proceeded to play in the NBA for over a decade. While he has all the accomplishments to act like a douche, he still doesn't. Instead, he likes to make people laugh by telling funny stories. We need more people like Jeff. That's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Click the screen to watch whatever video Legal Alerts wants you to watch.